Hello everybody and welcome back to another brand new video where today I'm looking at your responses, your reaction to episode 9 of Doctor Who Ascension of the Cybermen. So as always, as I'm sure you guys know by now, I've been doing this series of videos all the way through series 12, looking each week after each episode's aired at all your comments and just looking at what the fans overall thought of each episode, whether it was generally a positively received or negatively received episode. And I think most of series 12 has been pretty positively received. There's no denying episodes like Orphan 55 were pretty slated, but apart from that, I feel like generally the kind of response has been more positive than negative, which has been really, really great to see after the kind of disappointment and negativity surrounding series 11 that was really so prevalent and prominent. But today, of course, we're going to be stuck in and looking at Ascension of the Cybermen, an episode that I think was fairly well liked by fans, but, well, I guess we're going to find out now exactly how much people liked or didn't like this episode. So we won't waste any time, we'll get straight into our first comment, which today comes from Lucas Dolding. So thank you very much for your comment, who says, I don't really know what to think of this one. I felt like there wasn't too much happening until the last 5 minutes, which was a good 5 minutes at least. But the whole episode just felt like a build-up to something that something isn't going to pay off until next week, which makes most of this episode quite pointless. The guest cast was also pretty bland and forgettable, like most guest casts in Chibnall episodes, so I have no emotional investment in whatever happens to them. The RSC plot is the only thing I actually liked from the episode, but I have no idea what any of it means since there's so little context to what is happening. Which isn't bad, I do like this mystery Chibnall set up here, I just hope that the explanation and execution is all good. Ashad definitely makes for a better finale villain than Tim Shaw, but I feel like the Master's going to take away from all that in the finale like he did in Spyfall Part 2 with the Lenny Henry stuff. I thought some of the music was a bit better than it has been in the regular episodes from Akinola, and Whittaker's definitely settled more into the role recently for me. Overall I thought it was just alright, a bit boring in places and very intriguing in others. I'll just have to wait until next week to see how I feel about the story as a whole. Well, thank you very much for your comment, and to an extent I agree that this episode feels very much like a part 1. I know I mentioned this in my review, but more than ever I feel like with this story it feels like if the next episode's good, then in retrospect this episode will be better, but at the moment it just sort of leaves everything so wide open, which I think is good and it's what a two-parter should do, but it means that we can't fully really evaluate it as an episode yet until we find out how the rest of it comes off. I kind of agree that it felt like to an extent there wasn't that much going on until the latter part of the story, but the Brendan plotline was a very intriguing one, and it'll be very interesting to see how that all plays out in next week's episode. Next we have a comment from Gethin Jones, who says, I'm mixed on this episode and kind of left me feeling meh, really. You have managed to help me realise why I'm mixed. It's because there are too many confusing plot points going on. Nothing seems to link or come together to create a finale. Not the best cliffhanger because we knew Gallifrey and the Master would return. No shock at all. We could have had some answers at least, but sadly no. How did the Cybermen connect to the Timeless Child? Answer, they don't. Cybermen just seem to go to Gallifrey if they get there. A good episode, but Spyfall felt more like a finale than this episode did. I want to know what happens next, but I'm not as excited as it should be. It all better come together well because we still have the Ruth Doctor somewhere. So yes, again, somebody who wasn't massively enamoured about it. Again, the problem of it being a part 1 with just lots of weird stuff happening and not really being explained, which I don't think is necessarily a problem, but I feel, yeah, this is such a difficult episode to evaluate just because we don't have that second part yet. Now our next comment comes from Ryan Pollard. Thank you for all your comments as always on my videos, and today you say, Ascension of the Cybermen was a really engaging setup episode that kept you on the edge of your seat and got you invested in what's to come. This really elevated the Cybermen as a galactic universal threat, and this story has the potential of joining alongside Tomb of the Cybermen, The Invasion, Earthshock and World Enough and Time of the Doctor Falls as one of the very best Cybermen stories. However, it really, really needs the second part to be actually good, or at the very least competent. If we get a colossal dumpster fire like the Battle of Ranskorav Kolos, or something that was very messy and divisive like both The Wedding River Song and Hellbent, then that would be a crying shame. I just really don't want the series to go out on a really low note, because so far Series 12 has been a blast. Orphan 55 has been the only real clanger of the series for me, and a much more pleasant experience than Series 11 was for me. And yet I tend to agree that pretty much every episode of the series, apart from Orphan 55, has been pretty good. Not saying they've all been classics, but they've all been pretty good, with an interesting arc running through the series, and some real highlights with Spyfall, with Fugitive the Jadoon, and Haunting Villa Diodati last week. As mentioned there by Ryan as well, I think that it would be such a shame if the finale does all fall apart in the second part, given that it is really, really well set up generally. There's lots of very intriguing things that could play out, but I just really, really hope that Chris Chibnall can actually pull it all together and really produce an exciting, brilliant finale that also, as mentioned, isn't kind of completely divisive and splitting fandom down the middle in some people loving it, some hating it, though I sense that may happen given some changing of the law. We have a comment here coming from Lone Wolf Who, thank you very much, who says, Sasha excited me in less than 1 minute and the return of Gallifrey was amazing even though I predicted it. I like Koshamas and Ravio and I thought they were very good for side characters. I also think there's a little flirtation between Ravio and Graham. Would love to see them get together. I think Chibbers will also say that Brendan is a doctor, just like Ruth. The lone Cyberman is intimidating, but not as much as in episode 8, and this new Cyberman design is my favourite design ever. I also think the lone Cyberman has potential to survive and eventually return in a future series. I also felt a little remorse when Ryan got left behind at the start. The only thing I didn't like was that the cyber drones were Cyberman heads. I'd much rather it had been Cyber Mats. 13 yelling was an incredible scene, and the references are amazing, with Gold weakening them and turning off their emotional inhibitors before being references to Revenge of the Cybermen and Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel. So yes, certainly there were some nice references in there early on. I very much enjoyed the reference to them being defeated by Gold, good from good old 70s, 80s Who, which is always great to have a reference to. And yeah, a good point about the lone Cyberman being maybe a little bit less of a threat in this episode than he was in The Haunting of Villa Diodati, when he was kind of on his own and really fighting for survival. You almost felt like he was more deadly and threatening maybe than as more of a cyber leader that we saw in this episode. I still feel like he was a very strong villain, and as mentioned, I think it would be quite intriguing if he does survive to be able to come back for a future finale or a future episode, because I feel like there is a lot to explore in this character as a Cyberman rather than just a generic Cyberman where there's not really anywhere to go. So yeah, I'm glad to hear you enjoyed it, and thank you for your comment. Our comment here comes from Alfie0202, who says this episode was a terrifying episode. In my opinion, Chibnall has proved himself to be a brilliant Doctor Who writer. The cyber drones was a clever masterpiece from Chibnall. I cannot believe that this hasn't been thought of before. It was dark and brooding. I really feel the Doctor Who has reached a darker point in this part of the Chibnall era. The Brendan storyline had me intrigued, and I was shocked. But the big shock was Sacha Dhawan's master returning. Of course we knew he was going to come back, but how he came back is a mystery. There is so much mystery and so many questions, which is what you want from a first part of a Doctor Who finale. Chibnall deserves praise. So yes, somebody who very much enjoyed it there, which is always great to see. And also the classic kind of difference of opinion with Doctor Who fans there, where we had a previous comment saying the cyber drones are a terrible idea, why would you do that? And then this person saying he loves the cyber drones idea, and why have they not thought about it before? And that's just what I love about doing these videos, and I love about the Doctor Who fandom is that people can just be so completely split on their opinions, but in such a great way like that, where one person thinks that's a terrible idea and another person thinks that's a brilliant idea, and it's always really, really fun to see. And yes, certainly it was a great moment when the Sacha Dhawan master turned up again. Maybe it wasn't particularly surprising, but it still felt like a really exciting moment and really setting things up very excitingly for next week. Our next comment here comes from Taimur Mugu, I think, apologies if that's pronounced wrong, who says, I thought it was an okay setup episode. I'm intrigued by the Brendan subplot. I think he's definitely the very first incarnation of the Doctor, this mysterious child that couldn't die, so the Time Lords exploited it to advance their own race. The thing they had on him at the end looked like a chameleon arch to me. The rest of the episode was basically the Cybermen going after the Doctor and the others, which was fine. The cliffhanger has me super intrigued and was the best part of the episode. I think the finale is 65 minutes, but I'm still thinking we won't get all the answers. I think we will deal with the Cyberman stuff and find out what the Timeless Child is, but I think the Ruth Doctor will be saved for the next series. Also, I feel Ryan and Graham's time on the TARDIS is at an end. So yeah, some interesting thoughts there about both this episode and the next one. I do kind of tend to agree that I think the Brendan subplot could turn out to him being the original Doctor, maybe, possibly, and it turns out that the first part of this finale has featured the Doctor's origin story. That would be quite something if that's what it turned out to be, but I guess maybe it's a possibility. And yeah, part of me also is kind of, not worrying, but feels like maybe the Ruth Doctor thing won't get properly kind of focus on again until next series. Chibnall's talked about how he's not going to resolve everything in this finale, and there will be stuff that pretty clearly carries on into the next series. And I just get the sense, given the lack of any promotional mention of the Ruth Doctor, it may be they go that way and leave it for the next series for the Ruth Doctor. Now, Richard Coleman's got our next comment here with some similar opinions on the cyber drones, who says, I also thought the cyber drones were poorly realised. Using heads was just derivative of the Tok'ra fame from Last of the Time Lords and simply didn't fit with the cyber tech we know, i.e. cyber mats or cyber shades. The new look for the Cybermen themselves were really good in the area of head and shoulders, but the rest appears a little different from the original New Who Lumic design, which is probably on account of the tired and now annoying cyber stomp with which they walk. I found the script poor and clumsy in places, e.g. we know where you are, we will find you, but the story itself feels like it should be a solid one. Though I am concerned there may be too many elements, the Cybermen, the Master, Gallifrey and Ruth and the Timeless Child to juggle and resolve satisfyingly in the remaining episode. Overall though, this episode moves at a good pace. I like the mystery surrounding Brendan, and it certainly makes you want to watch the finale. And yeah, I mean, I personally do quite like the new Cyberman design. I think that I do tend to agree about the stomping. I feel like it's time to move on from stomping, because every single Cyberman in New Who has an annoying stomp, and it's like, that was cool at first, it was a bit different, a bit interesting, but now I'd like something a little bit different from the Cybermen. And even like the lone Cyberman, I think, does a stomping effect, which just doesn't seem necessary, I think, when you've got a Cyberman like that. So maybe they'll change that for the future, I don't know, but it's only a small thing in reality, really. And I also tend to agree, as I mentioned, that the second part of the finale has a lot to try and do in 65 or 70 minutes, which I'm kind of worried they might not be able to manage. And so our last couple of comments, we've got one here from Cat Tails, even, if I could get my words out there, who says, pretty intense episode. I'm not a big fan of epic battles and marching armies in any type of fiction. I always just want it to hurry up so we can get back to the character-driven moments. This was really good that it didn't yet go massively epic and Lord of the Rings scale war, but kept it to a more personal and small-scale fight for survival. Very impressed. Jodie, once again, as she has been all season, was giving it her all and really owning it, though the focus wasn't really on her this week. It was Ashad's episode, and I think next week will be all hers as she embarks on a deep personal journey with the Master. I'm really looking forward to it. Oh, and Brendan is ginger. Why has the Doctor always wanted to be ginger? Because that was the one memory that remains of her very first incarnation. Now, yes, that would be a really cool, not retcon, but explanation as to why the Doctor always wants to be ginger is because his very first incarnation was ginger. Wouldn't that be an interesting way to take things? But yeah, I also like that point about not being as much a fan of a big epic army sort of scale wars and everything like that, and having it being a generally more character-focused story, I think, in this first part, and probably in the second part as well. And I think that's so often the case with Doctor Who throughout really the years, probably maybe not so much in the RTD era, but certainly from the Moffat era onwards, that there's always been episodes that kind of built themselves up and it's seemingly like it's going to be a big, epic, huge scale, massive armies, big war, sort of space war type finale or episode. And then in reality, it's turned out to be a much kind of smaller, character-focused story that's not kind of focusing on that big war. And I wouldn't mind that in the finale as well. I feel like it's going to be much more about, as you mentioned, the Doctor and the Master and the revelation surrounding them rather than any big cyber war or anything like that, I sense. And so our final comment comes from Matt Jones. Shout out to Matt Jones. Thank you very much for watching my video. I hope you're doing good. But yes, you have said that you've got so many questions and so many theories running around my head now. The fact that the mystery and suspense is this high for a finale reminds me so much of the RTD era, and that can only be a good thing. The Brendan scenes appear to be so random compared to the rest of the plot, but I think it may all be connected. I think Brendan is a Time Lord, possibly the Timeless Child, possibly not. Either way, I think he's from Gallifrey. I also think he and Ko Sharmas are the same person. The staff he's carrying looks ancient, and when Gallifrey is revealed in the portal, he says, "I've never seen it look like that before." Now, the implication is that that's the first time he's physically seen something on the other side, but I think in actual fact he's talking about never seeing a destroyed Gallifrey before. He may have been sent to the planet pre-Time War to act as a guardian of an unknown portal, and perhaps the final solution of escape for the Time Lords. Could be massively wrong, and probably will be, but it's the one I'm sticking to heading into the next Sunday's episode. Yes, that's certainly a very intriguing theory, I think. It's great to hear that you enjoyed the episode as well, and it does very much bring back the vibes of a big epic RTD finale. Whether we, as I mentioned, whether we get that or not, it'd be very interesting to see. But yes, it's certainly an interesting theory about Ko Sharmas there. It was rather intriguing that he mentioned how he'd never seen it before like that. And I agree, I don't think he was talking about just seeing Gallifrey. I feel like he was talking about a destroyed Gallifrey and that he's seen Gallifrey in the past and so must have some sort of connection. Could he be Rassilon or something? I don't know, maybe that's a possibility. But certainly there's a lot of possible and exciting theories for the finale. So yes, overall I feel like it's an episode for fans that's to an extent a little bit hard to kind of rate. I feel like people are mostly excited for what's to come in the finale, but not necessarily that this episode on its own was that brilliant and perfect. It's sort of, maybe it will kind of improve once we get that other half of it to be able to fully flesh out the whole story, and then watching it all as one I think might make it more exciting for fans. Certainly it's been pretty well received, but I don't think it's necessarily as good as maybe last week's Haunting of Villa Diodati was. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because last week's episode was very much a classic Doctor Who story. This week is just very, very good setup for what hopefully will be a classic finale. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Do let me know your thoughts on it down in the comments below, and as always, hit that like button, that subscribe button if you're new here, and I'll see you again very soon for another one. Goodbye.